Hello everybody, thank you for joining me here this evening. So we've got a few people who have showed up already. Let's have a look at the list. Amanda, Jane, Carissa, Kate, Monica, Rob, Sarah, Shannon, Tina and Yvonne. Welcome to all of you. If you wouldn't mind just pinging me over a hello in the question box, just so that I know you can hear me loud and clear and that I'm not talking to myself. All right, good, I've got some hellos there, that's good news. All right, so some things to mention before we get started this evening. I am sadly no longer in Bulgaria. I'm back in sunny Hemel Hempstead in the NLP for Kids office instead. As such, where our office is based, it's on a main road, and sometimes we get fire engines and ambulances whizzing by. So you may hear some of that in the background today. I don't think you will, but in case you hear sirens, it's okay. It's not anyone coming to take me away with any luck. It's just the traffic from the outside noise. I am going to share with you my screen just as I did in last week's webinar. So you'll be able to see that very shortly. It does correspond with the sheets that I sent over to you. I've had emails from a few people saying that you haven't got the worksheets. It basically comes out on the same day that your webinar reminder comes out, which was today. So if you got an email from me earlier today, the link to the PDFs are in there if you want to go back and look at them, but I will send them out to you again tomorrow when I send you the recording from this evening. And Amanda says, I travel to Watford every 6 weeks. Love the Magic Roundabout. That's some people are wondering what you're talking about there, Amanda, but I absolutely do know what the Magic Roundabout is. It's nothing from any kind of 70s TV show. We've just got a very odd roundabout system here. All right, so I'm going to share my screen with you now for those of you who are in front of a screen. So if you're in front of your computer, again, if you could just ping me over a yes in the questions box, so I know that you can see my screen and that part is working okay. Good, all clear, excellent. All right, so same format as we did last week. I'm going to start the presentation and I'll just check in with your questions and comments every now and again, but we've got a fair bit to cover, so I want to make sure that I give you as much quality content as I possibly can. And this week, we're talking about communication, specifically how we as parents or practitioners can communicate in a way that makes children and young people really want to listen to what we've got to say. So, as we did before, I'm just going to do a very quick welcome because there will be some of you who are here this evening who didn't join us last week and have perhaps come especially for this webinar. So I will give you a very brief introduction. My name is Gemma Bailey. I am the director of NLP for Kids. I oversee the training for our practitioners, and I also run their mentoring sessions as well. I have a background in working with children as a community nursery nurse, and I've been working with NLP for the last 12 years or so. I'm also a trainer of hypnotherapy too. At NLP for Kids, we have a team of practitioners who have been trained in using NLP, which stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which essentially, it's no one thing that really describes what NLP is. Part of it's to do with your psychology and your thought patterns. Part of it's to do with the language patterns that you use in how you communicate with others and yourself, and some of it's to do with our habits and behaviours that we consistently follow. There are lots of different processes that make up what NLP is, and we've tweaked it and customised it a little bit specifically for working with young people. We deliver sessions on a one-to-one basis to children in our local communities. So typically parents would identify that they have a need for their child to perhaps see someone for some sessions to overcome things like confidence problems and anxiety and so on, and communication issues. And we also go out into schools and we deliver workshops in schools too. In terms of becoming more involved with the NLP for Kids team, well, I know some of you will have signed up to all 4 of these webinars. Some of you might just have signed up to tonight's one, in which case definitely take a look at the other 3 once you've enjoyed this one. We have a discovery day that takes place once a month ordinarily in central London. There is one taking place this Saturday just outside of Elephant and Castle. And that's a day of really finding out what the NLP for Kids team get up to, practicing with some of our techniques. So it's a good fun day. And then beyond that, we have different trainings running throughout the year for working with children, parents, teachers, and so on, and hypnotherapy for kids as well. So from this webinar series, there are 4 parts to it. This week is our 2nd session. If you didn't sign up for last week's one, and you get to the end of this one and think, oh, I would quite like to now, you can still purchase it and we'll send you the recording. Obviously, the live session has now passed, and we've still got 2 more sessions to take place after this one. I'll tell you a bit more about those at the end. So after tonight, I will be uploading this particular recording. It will be coming out to you via email tomorrow. I'll be sending you a link. The link is to the YouTube recording, but that's a private listing, so the only people that get to see it are the people with the link, i.e. you. There'll also be a link back to these slides that I'm sharing with you today if you haven't got them from the email that I sent out to you earlier. So, I know I asked this last time, so if you already answered this question, don't feel that you need to answer it again if you answered this last week. But for anyone who's new to tonight's webinar, or perhaps you didn't attend live last week, I'd like to know, who are you? Are you a parent? Are you a teacher? Do you perhaps work in social care? Do you work with young offenders? Just give me some indication of who you are so that I've got some idea as to why it is that you are here this evening, and I'm just going to have a very quick look to see what responses we've got. So we have a trainer of teachers in PE curriculums. Oh, that sounds interesting, especially PE, because there's lots of missing, PE is missing a lot off of the curriculum these days. We tend to find hypnotherapists, lovely, and a gymnastics coach as well. I bet you're super fit, aren't you, Sarah? Learner placement manager, finding work placements for 16 to 18-year-olds. That's an interesting one. We actually at the NLP for Kids head office, we always have an apprentice here, so we work with young people quite a lot. And I'm a peripatetic music teacher, NLP practitioner. We have a parent here. Well done, parents. Art therapist, lovely, and an occupational therapist working directly with children in schools. Marvellous. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining me this evening. So let's move on and let's start looking at our content for today. As I mentioned to you previously, before we get started in any kind of content, I always like to look at the why we are here. I don't mean in the spiritual sense, I mean literally, you know, why we're here doing this webinar this evening. And today it's all about communication skills and for us to be able to communicate in a way that makes children want to listen. Which then leans towards the question, well, why do children stop listening in the first place? Because, you know, I'm assuming that you're all reasonably good communicators thus far, but perhaps you've identified that there might be some things that you could start to do differently that would start to re-engage your young people in a better way. So let's take a look at some of the reasons why young people stop listening. It could be a learned behaviour from someone else within the family or within their immediate circle. The thing with children is that when they're learning, their brains have what we refer to as mirror neurons. And that means that they learn about the world around them from observing it, and then they reflect back what they see. So those of you who have ever worked with very young children in particular, or, you know, for those of you that are parents, you'll remember that when your children were very little and they perhaps went to nursery or they were in reception, and there would be a home corner there. And what we used to do when I worked in nursery was we would get a really good idea of what the home life looked like for the children by observing them in the home corner, because they would repeat all of the sorts of things that they saw and witnessed and experienced at home. And they would throw out these really wonderful, beautiful adult phrases. There's a very particular story that I could tell you about when I worked in nursery, and we used to have the little Tykes cars, you know, the cars that they can physically get in and drive. And there was one little girl, and we'd said it was tidy up time, and she was trying to park her car. And as she was reversing into the parking space, she actually swore out loud. A wonderful example of those mirror neurons in action. Mum was quite embarrassed when we told her about it later. But basically, children learn by mirroring what they see in the world around them. And listening is a skill. So it's one of the skills that we learn from observing others. So it could be a learned behaviour from a member of the family. Sometimes there's a little bit of attitude involved here, and they just like to think that they know it all already. Therefore, why should they be listening to you? They can just crack on and do whatever it was they had intended to do. Your information is irrelevant. So they like to think they know it all already, which means that they will disengage. Our job is to make sure that we communicate in a way that maintains their level of interest and engagement, so that they don't start thinking along that line of knowing it all already, which takes us on to they are not engaged or stimulated enough. So, you know, children's brains work fast. Their attention span is much shorter the younger they are. So the older they get, typically they get better at concentrating as time goes on. But their attention can flip very quickly. So we need to keep them engaged. We need to keep their mind stimulated. Sometimes their thoughts may be elsewhere because they are thinking about something else. That could be something that's bothering them or worrying them. It could be that, you know, they're mulling something over in their head, or they're figuring something out. And a little bit later on this evening, I'm going to talk you through how it is that we've really only got quite a small buffer of information that we can process, and how it's so easy for our thoughts to end up somewhere else other than in the moment of right here, right now, where I should be listening. Because actually there's a very small amount of information that we can take in. Well, we take in lots through our senses, but what we consciously are able to think about and focus on is actually quite small. For some young people, it may be a case of sensory overload. Now, you may have come across that terminology, particularly in reference to some learning difficulties. Asperger's and autism in particular mention the idea of sensory overload. So what we're saying there is that our senses are absorbing in information from the outside world, and instead of our brain filtering it so that we're just focused and concentrating on the most important things, actually that filtering process doesn't work too well, and then our senses become overwhelmed. And then it makes it very difficult for us to focus, concentrate, and ultimately listen. So, some of you will have seen this particular pie chart already, certainly those of you who know about NLP. In terms of how people communicate in congruence with each other, there are three main areas that we look at: physiology, words, and tone. And if we look at how those areas are divided up to make our overall communication, we can start attributing some percentages to how we communicate with others. Now, if you know the answers to this already, or if you've looked at the slides because the answers are on there, then don't join in. But I'm just going to flip over to the questions box right now to see if you can guess which amounts belong where. So, of those three things, words, tone, and physiology, which one is 7%? Which one is your 38%? And which one is your 55%? You can cast your votes now. So let's see what we're saying. So Caroline has said words. How much is words, Caroline? Tell me how much you think that one is. So Caroline's saying your words are 7%. Okay. I think you might have some people agreeing with you there. Lowest first. I don't know which one is first from how you're looking at it there, Sarah. So how about you tell me which one is your 7%? Let's see. Carissa's got it correct, well done. And Kate. Oh, Kate, all right, so Kate, you're a little bit off there, and I'll explain why in just a moment. Let me put you out of your misery. Oh, we've got some more votes coming in. So physiology, 55 words, semitone, 38. And what else have we got? Physiology, 38. Okay, tone, 55. That's not a bad guess. And okay, I'm going to put you out of your misery. Here we go. So, in terms of how you communicate with others, your words is a measly 7% of your overall communication. Now, in just a moment, I'm going to give you a breakdown of some different techniques and some different activities that you can do around words and then around tone and also around physiology. So although words is only 7%, we're still going to look at